the hushed corridors of the Vatican, time seemed to stand still. Pope Francis, the beloved leader of the Catholic Church, lay on his bed, his strength fading. Those closest to him gathered around, their faces etched with sorrow and hope. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke his last words, words that would resonate with profound emotion and meaning. But what did he say? And why do they move us to tears? To grasp the depth of that moment, we must first journey through the extraordinary life of the man who became Pope Francis. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born on December 17, 1936, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, to Italian immigrant parents. Raised in a modest home, he learned compassion and resilience early on. As a young man, he worked as a chemist, his hands mixing solutions in a lab. Yet his heart yearned for something greater. In 1958, he joined the Society of Jesus, dedicating his life to faith and service. His days as a Jesuit were spent among the poor, shaping a vision of a church rooted in humility. One story stands out. As a young priest, he sat for hours in the slums, listening to the confessions of gang members, offering them a glimmer of redemption. But his path was not without hardship. As a teenager, he faced a severe illness that claimed part of his lung, leaving him frail and uncertain of his future. Argentina itself was gripped by political turmoil during his formative years, testing his resolve. Would this quiet, unassuming man rise above these challenges, or would they define him forever? Rise he did. His illness deepened his faith, and his service in the slums forged a commitment to justice. By 1998, he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires, living simply in a small apartment, cooking his own meals. In 2001, he became a cardinal, his influence growing. Little did the world know, this humble priest was destined for a role that would change history. But how would his early lessons shape the leader he'd become? On March 13, 2013, white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel. Jorge Mario Bergoglio emerged as Pope Francis, the first Jesuit pope, the first from the Americas, and the first from the Southern Hemisphere. Greeting the crowd with a warm "Buonasera," he asked for their prayers, signaling a papacy of humility and connection. His actions spoke volumes. He lived in a Vatican guest house instead of the papal palace, and washed the feet of prisoners, men, women, even Muslims on Holy Thursday. Yet his bold reforms stirred unrest. He tackled Vatican, bureaucracy, and clerical abuse, pushing for a church focused on mercy over tradition. Conservative voices within the church resisted, especially when he opened discussions on divorce and remarriage. His encyclical, Laudato Si, called for climate action, drawing both praise and criticism. Could he hold the church together amid such division, or would his vision fracture under pressure? His resolve never wavered. He brokered peace between the U.S. and Cuba in 2014 and apologized to indigenous peoples in Canada for past wrongs. A lesser-known fact, he loved soccer, often joking about his loyalty to the San Lorenzo team. His impact reached beyond faith. World leaders sought his wisdom, and millions saw him as a moral beacon. But even as he changed the world, his own body began to falter. What trials awaited him in his final years? Pope Francis was no stranger to physical struggle. In his youth, losing part of his lung taught him endurance. As Pope, he carried on despite aging. In 2021, he underwent colon surgery, emerging with his usual smile. But as years passed, he relied on a wheelchair, his steps slowing. He once quipped, "I'm still alive thanks to God's patience," showing his humor in adversity. He appointed cardinals to carry his reforms forward, preparing for the inevitable. Then came the turning point. In his last months, he canceled public appearances. The Vatican issued vague updates. His condition was stable, they said, Yet the frequency of reports hinted at something more serious. Whispers spread. Was his lung condition worsening? Had surgery complications returned? The faithful prayed, but a heavy question lingered. Would this resilient man recover, or was the end drawing near? He faced his fate with grace. In an interview, he reflected, "I know this is the last stretch. I ask the Lord to say enough when He wants." His acceptance moved millions, a testament to his faith. A lesser-known detail, he loved tango music, finding comfort in its rhythms during these days. His spirit remained strong, but his body weakened. As his final days approached, the world held its breath. What would his last moments reveal? In a modest Vatican apartment, far from the grandeur of St. Peter's, Pope Francis spent his final hour. Surrounded by close aides and friends, the room was filled with quiet reverence. Medical equipment beeped faintly, but he had received the last rites and rested peacefully. This was the man who once carried a wooden cross in Buenos Aires slums, now preparing to meet his Maker. His life had been one of service, love, and unshakable hope. As his breathing grew shallow, he gestured weakly for his aides to draw near. Eyes that had seen the world's pain and beauty opened one last time. Those present leaned in, hearts pounding. What would he say? Would his words reflect the struggles he'd faced, or the peace he'd found? The moment hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. With a gentle smile, he whispered, "Thank you for your love and dedication. Tell the people to never lose hope, for God's mercy is endless. I go now to meet Him with joy in my heart." Then he closed his eyes, and his breath ceased. Tears fell freely among those present. His words were a perfect echo of his life: gratitude, hope, and faith. News spread, and the world wept. Vigils lit St. Peter's Square, bells tolled, and his message became a beacon. A final anecdote: he'd once told a child, "God's smile is bigger than ours." Now that smile seemed to shine through his parting words, leaving a legacy of love that will endure forever.